Hi, this is Kris Peters for the Hampton History Museum, and today we're going to take a look at one of the flintlock muskets that you might have found aboard a pirate ship 300 years ago. At the beginning of the 18th century, nothing about firearms had been standardized. They came in lots of different calibers and designs depending on where they were manufactured and what their intended purpose was. Now, the weapon that I'm using today is a club-butted Dutch fowling piece of the kind that would have been popular with sportsmen in Holland at the beginning of the 18th century. Now, despite it being a hunting weapon, you still would have found firearms like this on pirate ships because pirates had to rely on whatever they could get their hands on. I'm going to walk you through the process of loading and firing the weapon. I'm going to fire a round for you, and then we're going to talk real quick about what fighting at sea would have looked like during the golden age of piracy. Now, this is a flintlock firearm. The lock of a firearm is where the moving parts are, and this one uses a piece of flint striking steel to create sparks which ignite the gunpowder. So let's walk through the steps in loading it. The first thing you've got to do is take the cock or the hammer and draw it back to the half-cock position. And once it's clicked into the half-cock position, the weapon cannot fire. This is its safe position. And now you can start the loading process. You're going to reach down into the cartridge box that you carry on your belt or on a strap. You're going to take out a paper cartridge. The cartridge contains the powder and the bullet, so it makes it pretty quick to reload. You're going to tear the top off of the cartridge, and then you're going to tap some of the powder into the pan on the side of the gun. Now you're going to close the frizzen, which is the cover for the pan, and you're going to leave the weapon in half cock as you drop it down so that you can reach the muzzle. Now you dump the rest of the gunpowder, and then the bullet wrapped in paper goes in the barrel, and you're going to stuff that down using the ramrod that's carried underneath the barrel. So you're going to pack everything down the barrel, and then you're going to put the ramrod back in its holders beneath the barrel. Now you can bring the gun up, pull the hammer to full cock, shoulder the weapon, and fire. So now I'm going to load it up and actually fire a round. And there we have a flintlock musket. Now, there's a lot more than firearms available when you're fighting at sea. So let's walk through what a fight at sea would have looked like real quick. First, the two ships are going to draw next to each other, and they're going to throw grappling hooks with ropes attached back and forth. Now they can pull the two ships side by side, and while they're doing that, some of the men will be firing at each other using muskets like this one. Now, once you've brought the two ships side by side, you'll also be using the swivel guns that are up on the railing to fire at the men on board, and you'd be using the heavy cannons to slow the enemy ship down and catch up to them in the first place. So there's going to be lots of black powder smoke as the fight begins. Now, once you've grappled the two ships together, some of the men are going to start pulling out hand grenades like this one. Now you can see the fuse coming out of the top. This is just a hollow cast iron ball that would be filled with the same gunpowder that you're using inside the firearms. So you would light the fuse on top using a piece of slow match, and then you would throw this onto the deck of the enemy ship. This is going to explode on deck. It's going to do damage to the people, but leave the ship and especially the cargo intact. Now, once you've thrown a few grenades back and forth, you're going to drop boarding planks across the rails. Now men can go back and forth so that they can fight over who's going to control the ships. Now, you're not done with the musket yet, because by the beginning of the 18th century, you have a new weapon at your disposal. Plug bayonets like this one would go down into the muzzle of the gun, and now you can use this like a short spear. And as you're boarding the enemy ship, you've got that blade out in front of you where you can thrust with it and try to defend yourself as you climb aboard the enemy vessel. Now, the big problem with plug bayonets like this one is that the first time you hit somebody with it, it's going to become lodged in the barrel so hard that it's usually impossible to get out. Now, if you can get it back out, you may continue firing, but once you're on board the ship, you'll likely have to keep fighting using your gun like a spear. Now, if it reaches the point where you're going to be fighting inside the ship, you're probably going to leave the musket behind because it's big and unwieldy, and you're going to reach for a hunting sword like this one. Hunting swords were carried by gentlemen who were sporting, so it would be a good match for this hunting weapon. And hunting swords were used to finish off the deer at the end of the hunt. Now, they happen to be short, lightweight blades, and that makes them very popular on board ships, because once you're down inside that ship and there's not a whole lot of room to move around, you can still use a short sword like this one quite effectively. So hunting swords and hangers, short, slightly curved swords like this one, were very popular aboard ship. One of the weapons that was recovered from the wreckage of Queen Anne's Revenge, Blackbeard's flagship down in North Carolina, was a hunting sword, or the handle for a hunting sword, very similar to the one that I have now. So we know that pirates were using weapons like flintlock, fowling pieces, and muskets, and hunting swords to fight at sea. And they've also found lots of fragments of those hand grenades on shipwrecks as well. Now, there's a lot more that I could say about fighting at sea, but we're going to try to keep things simple. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again.